And it's not Godzilla.
This is something bigger.
Okay, before we start throwing names, we need to slow down for a second because Titan X doesn't just feel like another big monster in the ocean. And that's the scary part to me. I'm not even gonna lie. Most Titans in the Monsterverse follow some kind of logic. I'm talking about deadly things like radiation, ancient species, the Hollow Earth ecosystem, and even Ghidorah, who's literally an alien space dragon who still behaves like a living organism trying to dominate territory. But Titan X already feels different, and I feel a big reason for this is Axis Mundi. The simplest way to think about Axis Mundi is this. It's like a broken layer between worlds where gravity, time, and biology don't behave normally. And when nature's rules start bending, evolution stops being predictable. That's where Titan X starts feeling wrong. Really wrong. The trailer hints at something aquatic, massive, tentacled, possibly multi-eyed, and even called a relic of a time we never saw. So now the only question remaining is Titan X something we already know twisted by the rift, or something completely new? Let's find out together, shall we?
Could Titan X be Destoroyah? If Titan X turns out to be Destoroyah, the internet is going to melt down overnight. And honestly, I get why this theory is everywhere right now. In classic Toho lore, Destoroyah is basically a walking consequence of humanity messing with forces it doesn't understand. He was born from the Oxygen Destroyer, the same weapon that killed the original Godzilla back in 1954. And if you remember Monsterverse canon, the Oxygen Destroyer already exists there. In King of the Monsters, the military detonated it in the ocean, trying to kill Godzilla and Ghidorah, and while Godzilla survived and Ghidorah regenerated, we never really got closure on what that weapon did to the ocean ecosystem. And that's where the theory starts getting interesting. Some fans believe that if Axis Mundi is pulling matter, radiation, or even chemical residue from our world into that rift ecosystem, then whatever the Oxygen Destroyer left behind could have mutated something down there. And that lines up with Destoroyah's original concept, which is basically microscopic crustaceans mutating into one giant nightmare organism. Now yes, Titan X is described as tentacled and more aquatic than crustacean, but Monsterverse redesigns monsters all the time. The real reason people lean toward Destoroyah is narrative escalation. If Season 2 wants to raise the stakes fast, introducing a monster connected to the weapon that almost killed Godzilla before is a huge move. The only thing that makes me hesitate is scale. Destoroyah is usually treated like an endgame villain, the kind of monster you say for a giant theatrical movie. Using him first in a streaming show might feel like burning your biggest card early. So yeah, this theory is possible, but it would be a very bold move if they actually did it. The Lovecraft theory. Now this is the one that personally creeps me out the most. The second you mix tentacles, deep ocean horror, multiple eyes, and cult worship, my brain immediately goes to Lovecraft territory. I'm sorry, but I can't help it. I'm not saying that Titan X is literally Cthulhu, but I wouldn't be shocked if it's heavily inspired by that style of cosmic horror. If you ask me, the cult detail is the biggest clue here. In Lovecraft stories, these creatures are worshipped by hidden groups that believe they are ancient gods waiting to awaken. And Season 2 apparently mentioning a cult devoted to this creature is a huge red flag in the best way possible. Then you add the Axis Mundi factor, which is basically a reality-breaking zone, and suddenly the idea of a creature that exists outside normal evolution starts making sense. The Monsterverse usually explains Titans through pseudoscience, radiation mutation, ancient species survival, that kind of thing. But Axis Mundi opens the door to weirder biology. Maybe not supernatural, but definitely beyond normal Earth evolution. One thing stopping me from saying this is 100% a Lovecraft-style Titan is nothing but branding. Monsterverse usually prefers creating original Titans inspired by mythology or horror instead of directly pulling famous characters. So instead of Cthulhu, we might get something that feels like it belongs in that world, a deep ocean godlike creature that humans mistake for something divine. And honestly, that might be even better long-term because it lets them build new lore instead of borrowing old horror mythology directly. The hybrid theory. Okay, this theory is a little crazy, but not impossible if you look at Monsterverse history. The idea here is simple. Titan X might not be one species at all. It might be multiple biological sources mashed together by the rift distortion. And before that sounds too sci-fi, remember, this universe has already given us alien DNA, ancient Titan cells, and Mechagodzilla being powered by Ghidorah consciousness. So mixing biology is not new here. The big argument supporting this theory comes from Ghidorah. The weird-looking dragon monster with 3 heads was not from Earth. If even small parts of his biology survived somewhere, especially near portal or rift energy zones, there is a chance that alien cells could mutate local sea life into something completely new. And that could explain why Titan X doesn't look like one clean animal design. It feels like a creature that should not logically exist. And Axis Mundi is a place that could make something like this possible. The downside is storytelling clarity. Hybrid monsters can get complicated fast, and Monsterverse usually tries to keep monster origins simple enough for general audiences to follow. Plus, we already had the Ghidorah DNA used in another storyline with Mechagodzilla, so repeating that again might feel a little familiar. Still, if Titan X ends up being a rift-created biological accident, I wouldn't be surprised at all. Could this monster finally be Titanus Leviathan? Sometimes the simplest answer is the right one, and that brings us to Leviathan. If you remember King of the Monsters, Monarch confirmed multiple titans across the world through those outpost maps, and one of them was Titanus Leviathan. The thing is, we've never actually seen Leviathan on screen. We just know it exists somewhere in the ocean. And Monarch, the show, is literally built for this kind of reveal. It expands Titan lore without needing a giant theatrical battle every time. So if Titan X turns out to be Leviathan, finally getting its on-screen debut, that actually makes a lot of sense structurally. It's aquatic, it's massive, and Monsterverse loves adapting mythological monsters into Titan biology. The only issue is the design expectation. In mythology and most Titan references, Leviathan is usually described more like a giant sea serpent or sea dragon. Titan X, at least from what we've seen in trailers and descriptions, seems to lean more into a cephalopod-style anatomy. Personally, I think that if this is Leviathan, it will be a very reimagined version. Maybe something that adapted inside Axis Mundi instead of the normal Earth oceans. That would actually explain the design differences while still keeping the name canon. Could Titan X be Dagara? This one is for the hardcore kaiju nerds. And I do say that with love, because I'm absolutely one of them. Dagara is not exactly a household kaiju name, unless you grew up watching the Rebirth of Mothra movies, or went down some very deep Toho rabbit holes at 2 a.m. In Rebirth of Mothra 2, Dagara was basically a pollution-eating bioweapon created by an ancient civilization. But like most nature experiments in kaiju stories, it went very, very wrong. And weirdly, that concept actually fits some of the themes the Monsterverse has played with before, especially the whole idea of Titans being tied to Earth's balance. Where this theory gets interesting is the cult angle and the ancient civilization parallels. In Dagara's original story, it was created as a solution, not a monster, which aligns with the idea that maybe Titan X is something people believe protects or stabilizes the rift. Plus, Dagara is aquatic, mutates, and has a very unnatural body structure, which could easily be adapted into a tentacle-heavy design if Monsterverse wanted to modernize it. The big problem is recognition. Destoroyah or Ghidorah level names bring instant hype. Dagara is more niche. So if they use this concept, it's probably going to be heavily changed design-wise or be used as inspiration instead of a direct adaptation. What do you think? The Monster X theory. So this one is less about design and more about the naming, and I actually kind of love it for that reason. Some fans are pointing out that Titan X could be a reference to Monster X from Godzilla Final Wars, which eventually transforms into Kaiser Ghidorah. Now, before anyone panics, I don't think Titan X will literally turn into Ghidorah 2.0, but Monsterverse has already shown us that Ghidorah's presence leaves scars. His head powered Mechagodzilla. His DNA and alien biology were treated like dangerous resources. So the idea that something connected to Ghidorah could still exist somewhere is not crazy. Especially if Axis Mundi is pulling biological matter from different places or timelines. And visually, some trailer descriptions mention horns and a very aggressive silhouette, which is why people are connecting it to Ghidorah lineage or evolution theories. The thing that makes me hesitate is story repetition. Monsterverse already used Ghidorah as a major arc villain and then used his remains again for Mechagodzilla. Doing another Ghidorah-connected monster risks feeling like going back to the same well. But if Titan X ends up being something like a distant biological cousin, or something that evolved after being exposed to Ghidorah-level energy, that could still work without feeling like a copy-paste villain. The wild card, Biollante, Nakika, or something completely new. Okay, so this is where we have to admit something. Titan X might not cleanly match anything we already know, and that's actually exciting. Some people are throwing Biollante into the conversation because of the tentacle visuals and the idea of something massive and unnatural growing in water environments. Others bring up Titanus Nakika, which technically already exists in Monsterverse lore as a Kraken-type Titan, even though we have barely seen it outside novels and comics. And yeah, if Titan X turns out to be a heavily redesigned version of one of these, that would make sense from a canon expansion standpoint. But personally, and this is just me thinking out loud here, the Axis Mundi setup feels like it's building towards something new. Monsterverse has always mixed mythology, science fiction, and original monster design, and Axis Mundi feels like the perfect excuse to introduce something that doesn't need to follow any previous Titan blueprint. Something Riftborn, something that feeds on portal energy, something that maybe is not even part of Earth's natural Titan hierarchy. And honestly, if Titan X is completely original but inspired by deep ocean horror, that might be the smartest long-term move they could make.
This is not Kong.
And it's not Godzilla. This is something bigger.
The verdict. What is Titan X? Okay, if you put all the clues together, the tentacles, the possible double eyes, the rift origin, etc., Titan X is probably a completely new Titan, which means it won't be a remake, not a hidden legacy kaiju, something original but heavily inspired by Lovecraft-style deep ocean cosmic horror, that's for sure. And if Axis Mundi is basically a broken layer between worlds, then Titan X being a biological side effect of those portals makes a lot of sense. While a lot of fans, including me, would lose our minds if it turned out to be Destoroyah, the octopus-style anatomy and multi-eye description really pushes it away from that crustacean Destoroyah look. Instead, Titan X feels more like something I would call a Rift Guardian, or maybe even a parasite feeding on portal radiation. If it follows Monsterverse naming patterns, we could easily see something like Titanus Charybdis or Titanus Ryujin. However, the big danger here is not just physical destruction. If this thing is tied to Axis Mundi itself, then if it leaves or gets disturbed, it could destabilize the portals completely. And honestly, creating a brand new Titan is smarter long term, because it lets Monsterverse build new lore instead of risking ruining something like Destoroyah too early. Titan X feels like the fear of the unknown deep, not just oceans, but dimensions. And honestly, that's what makes Titan X so exciting right now. We're probably looking at the beginning of a completely new chapter for the Monsterverse, something bigger than just Titans fighting in cities. But what do you think? Do you want Titan X to be a classic monster reveal? Or are you ready for something completely new and terrifying? Drop your theories in the comments, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, hit like and subscribe, because we're definitely going to be tracking every Titan X reveal as Season 2 gets closer.